Carla had always dreamed of a vacation. She worked hard every day, balancing her job at a small marketing firm, and she longed for an escape. So, when she came across an advertisement for a cruise ship deal on social media, she felt it was the perfect time to treat herself. The cruise promised luxury, fun, and unforgettable memories. It seemed like the perfect getaway. She hadn't planned to go alone, but when her friends couldn't join her, she decided to book a solo trip. Carla wasn't scared of being alone. She was independent and often traveled by herself for work. But this trip was different. It was for relaxation, and she wanted to enjoy every moment. Before she left, she had been spending some time chatting online with a guy named David. They met in a travel group and bonded over shared interests in adventure and sightseeing. David seemed like the kind of guy she would normally go for: charming, funny, and thoughtful. His profile picture showed him smiling on a mountaintop, and they talked for hours each night before she left for the cruise. He encouraged her to take the trip and even joked about joining her for part of it. Carla wasn't serious about him at first, but his persistence made her curious. A few days before the cruise, David messaged her with a suggestion. "Why not meet me in person? I'll be on the same ship, and I think it would be fun. It'll be great to have someone to hang out with." Carla hesitated. She had never met anyone from the internet before, but there was something about David that made her feel safe. They had talked about their lives, their jobs, and their love for traveling. They both liked the idea of exploring new places, trying new things. And besides, she wouldn't be alone on the cruise now. She'd have someone to share the experience with. When she boarded the ship, Carla felt a rush of excitement. The sun was shining, and the ship looked huge, almost like a floating city. She spotted David waiting near the reception desk. He was just as handsome as his pictures, with warm brown eyes and a friendly smile. He waved when he saw her, and Carla couldn't help but smile back. They hugged briefly, and David immediately made her feel comfortable. "You look even more amazing in person," he said with a grin. "Thanks," Carla replied, laughing. "This ship is incredible." David offered to show her around, and they spent the first few hours exploring the ship together. They visited the pool deck, had drinks at the bar, and even played a game of mini-golf. Everything felt perfect, like a dream come true. As the evening drew closer, they joined a group of other passengers for dinner. Carla noticed that David was very good at making people laugh. He told funny stories, and everyone around him seemed to enjoy his company. Carla felt lucky to have met him. But as the night went on, Carla couldn't help but feel a slight unease. It wasn't anything specific, just a nagging feeling that she couldn't quite shake. David was kind, and he made her laugh. But there was something about the way he looked at her sometimes that felt off. Like he was studying her, assessing her. She pushed the thought away. Maybe it was just nerves. After all, she was on a cruise, surrounded by people, and everything seemed fine. She decided to relax and enjoy the trip. That night, as they walked along the deck, the wind ruffling their hair, David suggested they get to know each other better. "I'm glad we met. I feel like we have a real connection," he said softly. Carla smiled, grateful for his company. "Me too. This has been so much fun." But as the night grew darker and the ship moved farther away from shore, Carla's sense of unease started to grow. Something about David's insistence on sticking close to her began to feel like more than just friendly interest. By the time they reached the cabin, her excitement had faded, replaced with an uncomfortable tension. She told herself it was just the unfamiliarity of the situation. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. That night, as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Carla didn't know it yet, but her life was about to change forever. The next morning, Carla woke up early, her body still adjusting to the movement of the ship. She stretched and glanced around the cabin. The sunlight was streaming through the curtains, and for a brief moment, everything felt normal again. She smiled to herself. She was on vacation, after all. The worry from the previous night had started to fade, and she told herself that she was being silly. David was just being friendly, and she was overthinking things. But as she got ready for breakfast, a gnawing feeling in her stomach remained. It was nothing specific, just a gut instinct that wouldn't leave her alone. David was already waiting at the breakfast buffet when she arrived, looking relaxed as he filled his plate with eggs and bacon. He looked up and waved at her, flashing that charming smile she had seen before. It made her feel better, momentarily lifting her worries. "Morning," he said brightly, as if nothing unusual had happened the night before. "Morning," Carla replied, trying to sound more at ease than she felt. They ate together, chatting about the ship's amenities and the places they'd visit. But Carla noticed something different about David today. There was a hardness in his eyes that wasn't there before. His smile seemed a little too wide, a little too perfect. He was still charming, but it almost felt rehearsed. He was giving off a vibe that Carla couldn't quite place. She found herself watching him more closely now. As they finished their meal, David suggested they head to the spa. "You know, there's a really nice massage on the top deck. We should check it out." "Sounds great," Carla said, though the idea of getting too comfortable with him didn't sit well anymore. She decided to go along with it anyway. She didn't want to be rude, and besides, she hadn't paid much attention to the rest of the ship yet. A spa could be a good way to unwind. They spent the morning wandering around the ship, but as they made their way to the spa, Carla noticed something else. David was always just a little too close. He walked too close behind her, hovered a little too long when they were picking out what to do next. At first, she brushed it off, but it was starting to feel invasive. His presence was becoming overwhelming. As they stepped into the spa, the quiet ambience was a relief. Soft music played, and the air smelled of lavender. Carla felt a momentary sense of peace. David led her to a massage area where they could relax for a while. But as she lay down, she began to feel that sense of discomfort creep back. David sat across from her, watching her closely, his hands folded in his lap. Every now and then, he would make a comment about her great taste in relaxation, or how lucky she was to have found him on the cruise. His tone was too smooth, too practiced, and the way he kept glancing at her made her skin crawl. The session ended after a while, and they left the spa together. David was unusually quiet, his face unreadable. He offered to show her more of the ship, but Carla could feel something in the air had shifted. The comfortable dynamic from the night before was gone. The connection that she thought they shared now felt fragile, almost like an illusion. By the time they reached the top deck, Carla's unease had turned into something else, a deep, instinctive warning that she couldn't ignore. Something wasn't right. The ship, the luxurious surroundings, the peaceful ocean view, they all felt far away, distant, as though she were in a world that didn't belong to her anymore. David looked at her, and for the first time, Carla saw a flicker of something dark in his eyes. It was quick, like a shadow passing over his face, but she caught it. It made her blood run cold. "Carla, I'm glad you came on this trip," he said, his voice low and serious. "Yeah, me too," she replied, trying to keep her tone casual, though her heart was racing. "It's been interesting." David smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. He stepped closer to her, and Carla instinctively took a small step back. "You're so beautiful, Carla," he said, his voice dripping with an odd, almost possessive quality. She smiled politely, trying to hide the growing sense of panic that was welling up inside of her. "Thanks, David. I appreciate it." But David didn't move. He stayed close, just a little too close, his gaze fixed on her. And that's when she realized something. David wasn't here to be her friend. He wasn't here to enjoy a fun cruise together. She didn't know exactly what he wanted, but she knew that the friendly, easygoing man she had met online was not the same person standing in front of her now. Before she could process what was happening, David grabbed her arm. His grip was firm, controlling. "Carla," he said, his voice suddenly hard. "You're going to want to listen to me. We're not leaving this ship the way you think." Carla's heart dropped. A cold sweat covered her skin. The pleasant illusion of a vacation, the fun, the relaxation, it all shattered in that moment. David wasn't just some charming stranger she'd met online. He was something much worse. And just like that, Carla's nightmare began. The moment David gripped her arm, Carla's world seemed to tilt. Her heart raced, and every instinct screamed at her to pull away, to run, but David's hold on her was too strong. His eyes were hard now, with none of the warmth or charm that had drawn her to him in the first place. "David, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice trembling, though she tried to sound firm. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he pulled her toward a secluded area of the ship, a part of the deck that was shadowed and out of view from the rest of the passengers. Carla's mind raced as she tried to make sense of what was happening. Why was he acting like this? What had changed? "David, please," she said, her voice more urgent now. "Let go of me. I don't want to go with you." But David didn't let go. Instead, he turned to her, his eyes cold and calculating. "You don't understand yet, do you?" he said, his voice low. "This isn't a vacation for you. It's your last stop. You're mine now." Carla's stomach twisted. The way he said mine made her feel like a possession, like she was nothing more than an object to him. She pulled harder on her arm, but David's grip didn't loosen. "Let go of me," she cried, now fully panicked. David didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned in closer. "You're going to wish you had listened. Carla, you're going to wish you had stayed out of this mess." Carla felt her pulse pounding in her ears. The whole situation was surreal. She didn't understand any of it. Just yesterday, they had been laughing together, enjoying the beautiful ship and the promise of adventure. Now here she was, trapped in a dark corner of the ship, with a man who seemed to have completely changed overnight. "Please, let me go," Carla begged, her voice cracking. She had to get away. She had to find someone, anyone, who could help her. David didn't answer. Instead, he dragged her through a narrow hallway toward an elevator. His steps were quick, purposeful, as if he knew exactly where he was going. Carla stumbled behind him, her mind racing for any way to escape. But with each step, her fear grew. What was he planning? Why was he doing this? As they entered the elevator, David pressed the button for the lower levels of the ship. Carla's heart dropped. The deeper they went, the further they were from the safety of the upper decks, where the crowds and the open spaces could give her a chance to scream, to get help. The elevator doors closed with a soft ding, and the descent began. Carla looked around, her mind spinning. This was bad. This was so much worse than she had imagined. She had heard stories about people being trafficked, sold, or abducted, but she had never thought it could happen to her. Not here, not on a cruise ship, not with someone she had trusted. But now she was beginning to realize that David's true intentions were far darker than she had ever imagined. The elevator finally stopped, and the doors opened to reveal a dimly lit hallway. Carla's stomach twisted even more as she saw the look on David's face. It was a look of triumph, of possession. He was enjoying this, enjoying her fear. "Where are we?" Carla asked, her voice barely a whisper, her throat dry. David smirked. "You'll find out soon enough." He shoved her forward, and Carla stumbled as she was forced out of the elevator and into the darkened hallway. The air felt thick, heavy. There was a coldness to the space, an emptiness that made her skin crawl. The walls were bare, the only sound the echo of their footsteps. David didn't stop. He kept walking, leading her toward a door at the far end of the hall. Carla's heart pounded in her chest. The panic that had been building inside her exploded now. She had to get away. She couldn't go any further with him. She had to find a way out. With every ounce of strength she had left, Carla yanked her arm from David's grasp. She broke free, just for a second. But David was too quick. Before she could even react, he lunged forward and grabbed her again, this time locking his arm around her waist. "No!" Carla screamed, kicking her legs in an attempt to break free. "Let me go, please." But David only tightened his hold, his voice cold as ice. "You don't get to say no anymore, Carla. You're already in too deep." With that, he dragged her through the door, which creaked open on rusty hinges. The room beyond was dark, but Carla could see the faint outline of several large crates stacked against the walls. It looked like a storage room, cold and unwelcoming. "Please," Carla begged, her voice weak now. "What are you going to do to me?" David didn't answer. Instead, he shoved her into the room and slammed the door behind them, trapping them both in the darkness. Carla's mind raced. This was no longer just about escaping a man she barely knew. It was about survival. She had to find a way to fight back, to get out, before it was too late. As David moved closer, his face shadowed in the dim light. Carla's heart skipped a beat. The man she thought she knew, this friendly, charming traveler, wasn't who he appeared to be. He was someone else entirely. Someone dangerous. And in that moment, Carla realized the awful truth. David hadn't brought her on this cruise to have fun. He hadn't brought her here to make memories. He had brought her here for something far darker. And now, it was too late to turn back. Carla's heart pounded violently in her chest as she stumbled back, her eyes wide with terror. The small storage room felt like a prison now, its bare walls closing in on her. She could hear the distant hum of the ship's engines, but it was as if the sound were muffled by the dread that had overtaken her mind. The door behind her had been slammed shut, and the light in the room flickered weakly. casting shadows that seemed to dance menacingly. David stood in front of her now, his presence looming over her. He had that same cold, calculating look in his eyes that had first frightened her on the top deck. He was no longer the friendly man she had met online. He was something much darker, and she now understood the true nature of his intentions. "What do you want from me?" Carla whispered, her voice shaking. She tried to keep herself composed, but the fear was overwhelming. She was trapped, alone, with him. David didn't answer immediately. He simply took a step forward, closing the distance between them. The air in the room felt heavy, suffocating. Every part of her screamed to run, to escape, but there was nowhere to go. She couldn't outrun him in the narrow space of the storage room, and her mind was racing too fast to think of any real plan. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, David spoke, his voice low and measured. "You're part of a deal now, Carla. A deal that's been made, and you don't have a say in it anymore." Carla's stomach twisted. "What are you talking about? A deal?" David's lips curled into a twisted smile, though there was no warmth in it. "I didn't bring you here just to have a good time on the cruise. You think this was all some coincidence?" "No, Carla. You're exactly where I want you to be." Her breath caught in her throat as the horrifying realization began to sink in. You set this up, didn't you?" He nodded, his smile widening. "Yes, but I'm not the one who's going to benefit from this. You'll be sold, Carla. That's the deal. You were never meant to walk off this ship the way you came on it." Her knees buckled slightly, and she had to lean against one of the crates to steady herself. The words were like a slap in the face. She couldn't comprehend it. She had thought that something was off, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. She had been tricked, betrayed by a man who had seemed so kind, so caring. But now she understood that kindness was only a mask for something much more sinister. "You're going to sell me?" Carla croaked, her throat tight with emotion. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. "To who? What are you talking about?" David's eyes flickered momentarily, as if he was considering how much to reveal. Then he sighed. "To traffickers. People who pay good money for young women like you. You'll be worth a lot to them, more than you could ever imagine." Carla's hands trembled, her stomach lurching. Her mind was in shock, trying to process what he was saying. She had heard stories of human trafficking, of women who disappeared, never to be heard from again. She had never thought it could happen to her, never imagined it could happen so close, so suddenly. She had thought she was just going on a cruise to escape her daily life for a while, to relax. Now, she was nothing more than a pawn in some terrible game, a victim of a vicious, hidden world. "No," Carla gasped, shaking her head. "You can't do this. Please, David, let me go. I'll pay you. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't sell me to those people." David shook his head slowly, a bitter smile curling on his lips. "It's too late for that, Carla. You're already in it. Once we dock, the deal is done, and I'm paid. You're a commodity now, nothing more." A cold chill ran down Carla's spine as the weight of his words crashed over her. She was nothing more than an object to be sold. David stepped closer, and Carla instinctively took a step back, her back now pressed against one of the crates. Her pulse thundered in her ears, and she was certain that he could hear it too. She had to act. She couldn't just stand there, helpless. There had to be a way out. There had to be something she could do. But what? What could she do against someone like David? He was too powerful, too in control, and there was no one else around. The ship was enormous, but in this part of the ship, there was no one else. No help. David noticed her hesitation and smirked. "You can try to escape, but trust me, you won't get far. I have eyes everywhere. You're mine now. All you have to do is be quiet, do as you're told, and the rest will go smoothly." "No," Carla said firmly, her voice trembling but determined. "I won't let you do this. You won't get away with it." David raised an eyebrow at her, clearly amused. "You're brave. I'll give you that. But bravery won't save you now. Carla, this is bigger than you, bigger than both of us." Tears started to well in her eyes, but she wiped them away quickly, refusing to show any more weakness. She had to think. She had to find a way out. As David turned his back on her, Carla's eyes darted around the room, searching desperately for something she could use. Anything. Her gaze landed on a metal pipe that jutted out of one of the crates. It wasn't much, but it was something. She had to move fast. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Carla lunged for the pipe, her fingers closing around the cold metal. She gripped it tightly, her knuckles white. David hadn't noticed her movement. And for the first time, Carla felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't going down without a fight. The cold metal pipe felt heavy in Carla's hands. But it was the only thing she had. Her mind was racing, but her body acted on pure instinct now. David had his back to her, distracted by his own thoughts as he paced toward the crates. This was her chance. Carla's grip tightened around the pipe, and with a quick motion, she swung it toward him, aiming for his back. It wasn't a perfect swing, but it was enough to get his attention. David let out a startled grunt as the pipe made contact with his side. He staggered, his hand flying to the spot where the blow landed. And he spun around, eyes wide with disbelief. His expression shifted quickly to one of rage. "What the hell?" he growled, glaring at her as though she had committed the ultimate betrayal. His hands clenched into fists, and for a moment, Carla feared he might lunge at her. But she didn't back down. She held the pipe out in front of her, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Her heart was pounding in her chest, but adrenaline surged through her veins, pushing aside the fear for the moment. "You're not going to take me," she said, her voice shaky but firm. "I won't let you." David's face twisted with a mix of fury and disbelief. "You think you can stop me?" he sneered. "You're nothing but a scared little girl who doesn't know what she's up against." "I'm not scared," Carla spat back. "Not anymore." David took a step forward, clearly underestimating her. He reached out, attempting to grab her wrist. But Carla swung the pipe again, this time catching him on the shoulder. The blow was harder this time, and it sent him stumbling back, momentarily off balance. For a split second, Carla saw the shock in his eyes. She had caught him off guard, and that was all the opening she needed. She turned and ran, as fast as she could, toward the door. The metal pipe was still clenched in her hands, her only weapon, but she didn't know how much longer she could keep holding it. She didn't dare look back as she reached for the door handle, her fingers trembling. She turned it, praying that it wasn't locked. She had to get out. She had to get away from him. To her relief, the door creaked open. Carla didn't waste a second. She sprinted down the narrow hallway, her heart hammering in her chest. She couldn't hear David's footsteps behind her yet, but she knew he wouldn't stay down for long. She couldn't afford to look back. She had to move faster. The ship felt like a maze, the hallways twisting and turning in every direction. Carla had no idea where she was or where she was going. She just ran, hoping to find something. A crew member, a security guard, anyone who could help. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she sprinted through the corridors, her legs burning with each step. Every corner seemed to lead to another dead end, and the panic started to creep back in. What if she didn't find anyone? What if David caught up to her? She turned another corner and nearly collided with a crew member, a man in a white uniform. Her heart skipped a beat as she quickly blurted out, "Please, help me. There's a man. I'm being kidnapped." The crew member looked at her with confusion and concern, but before he could respond, she heard a loud shout behind her. "David! Carla!" His voice echoed through the hallway, full of rage. "You can't run forever." The crew member's eyes widened as David appeared at the end of the hallway, his face twisted with fury. "What's going on here?" the crew member asked, his voice shaky. Carla turned toward the man, desperation in her voice. He's trying to sell me. He's a trafficker. Please, you have to help me." David stepped closer, his voice calm but filled with menace. "She's just having a little breakdown, officer. Nothing to worry about here. Let her go." The crew member hesitated, looking back and forth between Carla and David, clearly uncertain about who to believe. Carla's mind raced. She had to convince him. She couldn't let David win. "Don't listen to him. He's lying," she cried. "I don't know him. He's been following me, trying to take me. Please, you have to trust me." David took another step forward, his tone now more forceful. "She's delusional. Just let me take her back to her cabin, and this will all be over." Carla's stomach twisted. This was her chance, but she had to act fast. She couldn't let David out of her sight again. Before David could make another move, Carla lunged at the crew member, grabbing his sleeve and pulling him toward her. "Please, you have to stop him. He's going to hurt me." David's eyes narrowed. He stepped forward, but this time, Carla was ready. With one final burst of strength, she raised the pipe high and swung it toward him. It caught him in the chest, knocking him back and forcing him to stumble. The crew member looked startled, but finally seemed to make a decision. Call security. He shouted to another nearby worker who had appeared in the doorway. Now, David's eyes flashed with fury, and for a moment, Carla feared he might retaliate. But then, he seemed to realize that there was no way out. The security team was on their way, and he was outnumbered. He turned, his face twisted with rage. This isn't over. He hissed before darting down the hallway and disappearing into the shadows. Carla stood frozen, still clutching the pipe in her hands. The adrenaline began to wear off, and the fear, the exhaustion, all hit her at once. She collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath. She couldn't believe she had made it this far. She couldn't believe she was still alive. The crew member crouched beside her, his voice soft and reassuring. Are you okay? We'll get you somewhere safe. Carla nodded, unable to speak, still too shaken by the close call. But the overwhelming sense of relief flooded over her as she realized she had made it out. She wasn't alone anymore. And David? He wouldn't get away with what he had done. Carla sat in a small, quiet security office, a soft hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Her hands were still trembling, her body aching from the strain of her escape. But she was safe. For the first time in what felt like days, she allowed herself to relax. She was surrounded by officers, crew members, and other passengers who had been alerted to the danger she had narrowly escaped. The ship's security was now in full swing, and the thought of that dark, enclosed room felt like a distant memory. The security team had quickly detained David. He hadn't put up much of a fight when the officers arrived. It seemed that even though he had been prepared to take her, he had underestimated how quickly things could spiral out of control. Now, Carla was in the aftermath of it all, confused, tired, but somehow a little hopeful. One of the officers, a woman named Officer Grant, had been particularly kind to her. She'd sat with Carla, talking her through the situation while they waited for the authorities at their next port of call. She had brought her water, offered comfort, and asked all the right questions, making sure that Carla's statements were recorded accurately. David, Officer Grant said gently, breaking the silence that had settled between them. We've reviewed his file. He's known to us. He's part of a trafficking ring that's been operating under the radar for months now. Carla's heart skipped a beat at the mention of the word ring. The weight of it all hit her again. She wasn't just a random victim. She was part of something much bigger. She'd been a target all along, and the whole thing had been a well-thought-out operation. Do you have any idea how he found you? Officer Grant asked, her eyes studying Carla carefully. He used an online travel forum, didn't he? Reached out to you through social media? Carla nodded, still trying to process the information. Yes. We started talking a few weeks ago. He seemed so normal, so friendly. He even convinced me to go on the cruise. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Officer Grant nodded, her expression sympathetic. That's how they operate. Carla, they create a connection with their victims. Make them feel safe. Make them feel like they know them. Once you trust them, they can manipulate you into doing things you wouldn't normally do. Tears welled up in Carla's eyes again, but she blinked them away. The weight of betrayal was heavier than she had anticipated. David had lied to her. He had made her feel like she was special, like their connection was real. And for a while, she believed him. Now, that belief felt foolish. I'm so sorry, Officer Grant said softly. This wasn't your fault. You were targeted, just like many others before you. I should have known something was wrong. Carla whispered, her voice cracking. I felt it, but I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. I didn't listen to my gut. Don't blame yourself, Officer Grant said, her tone firm. This is what they do. They know how to prey on people's weaknesses. They use charm, deception, and manipulation. You're not the first person he's done this to, and you won't be the last. But you're the one who fought back. You're the one who survived. Carla managed a weak smile. It was a small comfort, but it was a comfort nonetheless. She wasn't alone. She had done the right thing. She had fought for her freedom, even when it seemed like there was no way out. Just then, a man entered the room, a tall, serious-looking officer with a notepad in his hand. He introduced himself as Detective Barnes. He had been informed about the situation and was now part of the investigation team that would follow the case once the ship docked at its next port. Carla, Detective Barnes said kindly, sitting down across from her. We're going to get this sorted out. David has already been taken into custody, and we've alerted local authorities. We've also been tracking his movements. and we believe this operation goes much further than him. But we need your help." Carla looked at him, feeling the weight of the moment. "What do you need from me?" "We need to know everything you can about how David approached you," Detective Barnes explained. "Any details you can remember. We'll be using your statement as part of a larger investigation. We're going to make sure that he and his associates don't hurt anyone else." Carla nodded, though she wasn't sure how much more she could remember. She had already shared everything she could, but the thought of more people being hurt by this man, by people like him, made her stomach twist. Detective Barnes continued, "We've been tracking similar cases. David's not acting alone. He's part of a larger trafficking network. And there are others out there, some who might still be on this ship. But with your help, we can make sure they don't get away." Carla's eyes widened. "You mean there are other victims? More people like me?" Detective Barnes nodded grimly. "Yes, but that's why it's important to act quickly. We'll make sure that everyone is safe." Just as the conversation was settling, a sudden loud knock on the door interrupted. Officer Grant got up and opened it, revealing a familiar face. It was one of the ship's crew members, looking both concerned and urgent. "There's a situation on deck," the crew member said quickly, his voice low. "We just received a report that a passenger is missing, and there's a man matching David's description asking around. We think he may have been working with someone else." Carla's blood ran cold. It wasn't over yet. Detective Barnes exchanged a glance with Officer Grant, and without another word, the two officers stood up. "Stay here," Officer Grant instructed Carla. "We're going to take care of this." As the officers left, Carla sat in the quiet room, her heart racing once more. The sense of relief she had felt moments ago had quickly turned into a new wave of fear. David wasn't alone. There were others, and if there were more victims out there, they were still in danger. Her mind raced as she realized just how deep this went. She had been a pawn in a much bigger game, and it wasn't over. Not yet. Carla's hands trembled as she sat in the small security room, the hum of the fluorescent lights above almost deafening in the tense silence. She had been told to wait while the officers dealt with the situation on deck, but the anxiety was unbearable. She had come so close to escaping, to being free, but now it felt like everything was falling apart again. Her mind raced, replaying everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. David's charm, his deception, his cold, menacing behavior once he had her in his grip. She still couldn't believe how easily she had fallen for his lies. But it wasn't her fault, she reminded herself. She hadn't known. She hadn't expected to be targeted. She glanced toward the door as the sound of footsteps approached. Officer Grant entered first, followed closely by Detective Barnes. Their faces were grim, and Carla immediately felt the shift in the atmosphere. "We have a situation," Officer Grant said, her voice serious. "We've found another victim. Another woman. We've located her, and she's safe for now. But she's been through a similar experience as you. It looks like she was being groomed for trafficking, just like you." Carla felt a sickening knot tighten in her stomach. She wasn't alone in this. As much as it hurt to know that someone else had suffered, it brought a flicker of hope that this operation could finally be shut down. The authorities were catching up, but the thought that someone else had been hurt because of David, and possibly others, made her feel nauseous. "Who is she?" Carla asked, her voice trembling. "Where is she now?" "She's in a safe room downstairs," Officer Grant replied. "We're keeping her under protection until we get the full story from her. She's been through a lot." Carla nodded, but before she could say anything more, Detective Barnes spoke up. "There's more," he said, his voice low. "The man who was with David, the one we suspected was working with him, is gone. We've searched the ship, but we can't find him. He's vanished, and it looks like he's been working with David the whole time. This may have been a much bigger operation than we realized." Carla's breath caught in her throat. The realization hit her like a punch. If David had been part of a larger network, then the scope of what they were dealing with was far beyond what she had imagined. And the thought that one of the traffickers was still on board and could still be operating made her stomach churn. "They'll be caught," Officer Grant reassured her, though her voice lacked the certainty it had before. "We've got a full team working on this. They won't get away. We have enough evidence now to link David to a larger trafficking operation." Carla's mind was still reeling, but she nodded. "What happens now? Will the ship be checked? Are we safe?" Detective Barnes gave a slight nod. "Yes. The security team is locking down all exits. No one's leaving the ship until We're sure that everyone involved is accounted for. Carla's heart began to race again. She didn't want to be in a confined space with a trafficker on the loose. But she knew there was little choice. She wasn't about to let fear rule her now. She had fought to get this far, and she would see it through. You're safe now, Carla, Officer Grant added, her voice calm and assuring. We'll stay on top of it. You did the right thing by speaking up. Carla tried to force a smile, but it felt weak. I just want to make sure it's over. I don't want anyone else to get hurt. I understand, Detective Barnes said, his expression hardening. We'll do everything we can. The sooner we have the full story, the sooner we can make sure this is finished for good. Suddenly, the door opened again, and another officer stepped inside, his face tight with urgency. Detective Barnes, we need you on the deck. We've located the second suspect. Carla's heart skipped a beat. Was it over? Had they found the trafficker responsible for all of this? I'll be right there, Detective Barnes replied, standing up and quickly walking toward the door. He turned back to Carla. Stay here. We'll make sure you're safe. The door closed behind him, and Carla was left alone with Officer Grant once again. The room felt colder now, as if the tension in the air had thickened. She sat there, her mind racing, her body still on edge. What if they didn't catch him? What if there were more people like David out there, working in the shadows, preying on others? What if she had only scratched the surface of a much larger operation? She couldn't help but wonder how many other women were out there, in the same dangerous situation she had been in. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps outside. The door opened, and a familiar figure stepped inside. It was the woman from earlier, the other victim. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. But there was a look of relief in her expression too. She had survived. Carla stood up quickly, her heart aching for her. The woman looked at her, and for a moment, they shared a silent understanding. They were in this together. They had both been through hell, and now they had to see it through to the end. The woman gave her a weak smile. Are you okay? She asked softly. Carla nodded. I think so. Are you? The woman hesitated, then nodded as well. I will be. Thanks to you. Carla was about to respond when the door swung open again. Detective Barnes and Officer Grant stepped back into the room, their faces grim but with a sense of accomplishment. We've got him, Detective Barnes said, his voice firm. The second trafficker has been apprehended, and we're going to make sure they face justice. It's over. Carla's breath caught in her throat. It was over. After everything she had been through, the fear, the betrayal, the panic, it was finally over. The weight of the situation began to lift from her shoulders. And for the first time since she boarded the ship, Carla allowed herself to feel something she hadn't in a long time: relief. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a survivor, and the people responsible for what had happened to her and so many others would pay. As the officers led the two women to safety, Carla took one last look at the ship, at the place that had once seemed like a dream come true, but had turned into her worst nightmare. But now she was free, and nothing, not even the memory of David or the other traffickers, could take that away from her. It was over.